Well, the birds might be singing outside, but it is cold, gray, and rainy out there. It's a good day to be inside the greenhouse. Welcome to March 11th. Allow extra time if you plan to walk Canada's Yonge Street. At 1,178 miles long, it runs from the shore of Lake Ontario in Toronto to the town of Rainy River near the Ontario-Manitoba border. Happy Commonwealth Day, Canada. Today I'm going to talk about pesticides. Specifically, I'm going to talk about one type of pesticide. Now, we do have three pests that we need to consider on our gardens. There are insects, weeds, and fungal infections. Yes, there are bacterial infections. However, those are usually dealt with by breeding of the plant and some preventative maintenance. It's not usually dealt with by an actual chemical expedient. Now, this is an example. Roundup is an example of an herbicide. This is an example of an insecticide. And fungicides are copper sulfates, neem oil, although neem oil is also used as an insecticide. You know, let me work while we talk. I'm gonna get some stuff done. Come on, babies. Just sit over here so you don't get hurt. Thanks. Get out of the way. They were empty. Don't worry. They were empty. There are a bunch of different chemicals that we use as insecticides. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. It's just one specific chemical. Specifically, the chemical that's used in Safer's End-All is called a, if I can pronounce this right, a pyrethrin. Pyrethrins are made from the marigold plant, which contains pyrethrum. That's a compound that is incredibly deadly to insects, but it is extremely short-term, very biodegradable, and generally considered safe by the agricultural community. This actually probably better be the other way around. It's really important to consider what insecticides we're going to use before our season starts. Then we know exactly how much we're going to spend on it and what alternatives we might have to actually using it. As we can see with a new study out about pyrethrins, sometimes there can be some downsides to our favorite insecticides. The 94 inches without the connectors. 94 inches. I better write that down. 74 inches without connection. Okay. Now, up here, that study I was talking about was released in January of this year, 2024, and it's called, get ready for this, Multigenerational Indirect Exposure to Pyrethroids Demonstrates Potential Compensatory Response and Reduced Toxicity at Higher Salinity in Estuarine Fish. Now, if you're not into reading scientific studies and articles like I am, you're probably having flashbacks to high school algebra. I'm sorry. I'll do my best to break this down in actual understandable chunks. What this study actually did was it took 3 different types of pyrethrin. Here, I get the exact names for you. Biphenthrin, cyfluthrin, and cyhalothrin. It took all 3 of those and tested them on little fish. Itty bitty little fish. Like embryonic and larval age fish. It actually dropped very small amounts of these chemicals into the water where the fish were. And when I say small amounts, I mean like 1 drop in an Olympic-sized pool amount of water. That's how little they used. The silverfish that they used them on showed some surprising reactions. Oop. All right, get some water going. Now, the fish that were exposed to these chemicals actually moved slower than the control group of fish that were not exposed to the chemicals. That meant they ate less than the control group did. Well, when you eat less as a little one, you don't grow as big as fast. You don't get a whole lot of the nutrients you're supposed to for life. It's a pretty sad way to go. And you actually can't compete against not only other fish, but you can't stand up to predators that well either, can you? As well, the male fish, the original male fish that were exposed to biphenthrin and cyhalothrin had smaller reproductive organs. Would make me very happy if I was a little fish. Here's another funny thing. Very strange. The second generation of fish actually moved a lot faster than the original fish and faster than the control group. They looked like they were overstimulated. They acted very strangely for these little silverfish. Come on, little kale. Drink up. Oh. Dirty, dirty, dirty. Dirty, dirty. I want to put this in there. I want to put. Pardon me. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be tidy. All right. Here's where I have to refer to my notes, just to make sure that I'm giving you guys the right information. Hashtag reality check. Because hearing these things about what pyrethrins can do to fish is pretty scary. You'd think you'd run out and just get rid of all your insecticides right now. But that's not going to actually solve the problems that we have. What we need to do is understand exactly what this insecticide is doing and how it works so that we can use it responsibly and not cause any more problems than we already have. So, here's some hashtag reality check for you. Fish and humans actually share 70% of their genetic material. That means what could affect them could affect us. So it is important that we understand exactly how these insecticides work. In sunlight, pyrethrins can stick around for about 13 hours. So if you, from the time you're spraying until 13 hours later in sunlight, pyrethrins break down and go away. If you're spraying it on a sunny morning, then, you know, you're pretty good to go 13 hours later. By the time you get to bed, it's going to be pretty much gone. Without sunlight, in water, pyrethrins can stick around for up to 17 days. So, if you're applying an insecticide just before a rain shower, it is possible all those pyrethrins could wash off the plant. But pyrethrins don't generally go down into the soil profile. They just don't sink down well. When they hit the soil, they tend to stick to the sediment. So when water comes along, it washes off that top, goes down with the soil sediment, down into, well, wherever your water goes. So it's important for us to know, where does our runoff go? Does it go to a river, a lake, an ocean? Does it go to a municipal water source? Where your water goes is that important, because if the pyrethrins in the water are sticking around for 17 days and they're stuck to those little sediments, the fish that are in the rivers or in the ponds, in the lakes, if the fish are feeding off those sediments, they could be ingesting those pyrethrins. Yes, and handles. Well, that's going to do nicely. All right. Wow. Hello, little pomegranates. I think it's time to take a look at you. Now, wild birds are practically invulnerable to pyrethrins. One creature that is not is the honeybee. The honeybee is probably one of the most vulnerable, even more so than fish. So we need to be very careful when using these in our garden around honeybees. One of the common recommendations is apply a pyrethrin insecticide at the end of the day. So the honeybees have already gone to bed. Well, that's okay. But here in my part of Oregon, we might get a maximum of 9 hours before the honeybees come out to play again. That means there's a generous handful of hours that the honeybees still could be affected by those pyrethroids. My recommendation, apply it in the morning before the sun comes out on a clear day, not cloudy and rainy. And cover your plants with netting or with something to prevent honeybees and pollinators from actually coming and touching the plant before those pyrethroids have broken down in the 13 hours. Then you can happily just take away the netting after that, and you're good to go until the next time you need to use that pyrethrin, which really depends on the schedule you set for your insecticide use. Now, because of what we've seen happen to fish when they are exposed to pyrethroids, absolutely, pregnant humans should either avoid using pesticides like pyrethroids, or they should be very, very careful to wear appropriate PPE, which is personal protective equipment, such as long sleeve clothing, eye protection, breathing masks, especially breathing masks. Don't let it get on you. That's not only in order to protect you, that will protect your baby and their babies after them. Now, knowing the dangers, why do I continue to use pyrethroids in my greenhouse? Well, it's a very effective insecticide. I have problems with ants, with aphids, and with fungus gnats in here all the time. Now, I'm not going to have any more kids. I already know that. I'm not at risk for that. But I'm still careful about my usage. I use this, and I make sure that there are no pollinators inside this greenhouse when I'm using it. It's very helpful in the wintertime because they don't generally show up in the greenhouse. This can kill fungus gnats almost immediately when I use it. Ant bait is usually better for the ants, but this can stop a line of ants from actually getting to the aphids that they're attempting to farm when I find aphids. And then it takes care of the aphids generally. I can also use this and leave the greenhouse for a period of time so I'm not breathing it in. I'm also very careful not to get this on my skin, so it's not a skin irritant for me. Wear gloves. It's always a good idea when applying insecticides or any pesticide really. One of the last things to know about pyrethroids is it's a non-systemic insecticide. You can't mix it with water and then apply it to your plants and expect it to work. The plants aren't going to take it up. All that's going to happen is it's going to bind with your soil and take that much longer to break down. The important thing to remember, sunlight does break it down and it works very fast. Be careful with your water. Aquatic water life is very, very susceptible to pyrethroids. So if you think that your water is going to run off into a source of water for aquatic wildlife, it's probably best to choose something else or make sure that it's not going to run off, it's not going to get rained on and run off into that source. I'm going to need to block up one end of this. Let's see, this is going to be the back side. I want it like this, so I think I need to block up this end. That's not the right one. Well, it's supposed to go like that. I think I'm going to have to make some adjustments. Adjustments are exactly what you absolutely need to know about your insecticide use. Adjust it for your use. Don't just go on what other people tell you. Take a look at how much insect pressure you have. Look at the available insecticides and make sure you understand how they work before you make a decision. Don't just snatch something off the shelf. If you don't recognize the name, look it up. Look it up and see what the action is. How fast does it break down? How fast does it go away? Exactly what insects are affected by it. And are your pollinators going to be affected by it? Check everything out for your use and then make your decisions. And always check the usage on the bottle. There may be different ways that restrict you in how often you can use it. Hope you enjoyed this little TED Talk of mine, and I'll talk to you when I've got a handle on this hydroponic system.